My wife asked for an open marriage because she has needs I can't meet. She had a guy lined up. I agreed and started dating her sister. She tried to close the marriage the next day. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a wild ride. My wife of 4 years asked me for an open marriage last month because apparently I can't meet her needs. She already had some dude waiting in the wings. I said sure, went out with her sister that same weekend, and suddenly my wife wanted to close the marriage faster than she opened it. Here's how it all went down. I'm Ryan, 32 years old, and I work as an operations manager at a distribution center here in Ohio. Not glamorous, but it pays well and I'm good at what I do. The kind of job where you solve problems all day, manage people, and go home tired but satisfied. I've been at the same company for 8 years, worked my way up from the warehouse floor. Started as a forklift operator right out of community college, moved to shift supervisor within 2 years, then assistant manager, and finally got promoted to operations manager about 3 years ago. Own a modest house in the suburbs, drive a paid-off truck, and have zero debt. Boring to some people, but stability was always my thing. My dad lost his job 3 times when I was growing up, and I watched my parents stress about money constantly. Promised myself I'd never live like that. So I save, I invest. I don't buy things I can't afford. Financial security might not be exciting, but it lets you sleep at night. The house isn't anything special, but it's mine. 3 bedrooms, a decent yard, a garage big enough to work on projects. I'd been restoring my grandfather's old fishing boat in there for the past 2 years. Every weekend I'd spend a few hours sanding, painting, replacing hardware. Grandpa taught me everything about boats when I was a kid. He passed 5 years ago, and working on that boat felt like keeping a piece of him alive. Met my wife Courtney at a friend's wedding about 6 years ago. She was one of the bridesmaids, all done up in this lavender dress that looked like it cost more than my rent at the time. She worked in pharmaceutical sales back then. Charming, confident, knew how to work a room. The kind of person who could strike up a conversation with anyone and make them feel like they were the most important person there. I was just some guy at the reception trying not to spill food on my rental suit and wondering if I could sneak out early. We hit it off immediately. She came over to the bar while I was getting a refill and made some joke about how the bride's uncle had been hitting on every woman under 50. We ended up talking for 2 hours, moved to a quiet corner of the venue, and closed the place down. She liked that I was stable and grounded while everyone else her age was still figuring out basic adult stuff like how taxes worked and why you shouldn't put credit card debt on another credit card. I liked that she was ambitious and outgoing. Everything I wasn't. Opposites attract, right? That's what everyone says. Looking back, maybe we were just filling gaps in each other instead of actually connecting. The first few years were solid. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Did the whole thing right. Took her to the restaurant where we had our first real date, got down on one knee, the works. She cried, said yes, posted about 12 photos to social media before we even got the check. Got married the following spring in a ceremony that cost way more than I thought weddings should cost, but made her happy. We bought a house together after the wedding. Not the house she originally wanted, which was this new construction McMansion that would have eaten our entire budget, but a reasonable compromise in a decent neighborhood. She was disappointed, but I held firm. First big argument we ever had, actually. She wanted to know why I was being so cheap when we could afford the bigger place. I tried to explain that just because you can afford something doesn't mean you should buy it. She rolled her eyes and called me her practical husband, which didn't sound like a compliment. Her family loved me, though, especially her dad Richard, this old-school accountant type. Quiet guy, but sharp as a knife. He'd worked at the same firm for 35 years, drove the same car for a decade at a time, and thought the key to a good life was compound interest and patience. We'd sit on his back porch during family visits and talk about investment strategies and property values while the women caught up inside. He told me once that I reminded him of himself at my age, which I took as high praise. Her mom, Patricia, was the opposite. All warmth and hugs and Sunday dinners that started at 4 and didn't end until after dark. She'd send me home with containers of leftovers and text me recipes she thought I'd like. Treated me like the son she never had from the moment she met me. And then there was her younger sister, Brooke. Brooke's 28. Works as a veterinary technician at an animal hospital about 20 minutes from here. Where Courtney is all polish and presentation, Brooke's more laid back. Jeans and flannel shirts, hair usually in a ponytail, drives this beat-up Jeep she refuses to replace because it still runs fine. She's the kind of person who shows up to family dinners with dog hair on her clothes and zero apologies about it. The sisters were always different, even as kids according to Patricia. Courtney wanted ballet lessons and beauty pageants. Brooke wanted to play in the mud and rescue injured birds. Courtney went to a good university and majored in business. Brooke went to community college for her vet tech certification because she wanted to start working with animals as soon as possible. Different priorities, different values. I always got along well with Brooke. We'd end up talking at family gatherings while Courtney socialized with everyone else. Brooke and I would debate about whether the Browns would ever make a playoff run or compare notes on home improvement projects. She'd been renovating her bathroom by herself using YouTube tutorials, and I'd helped her troubleshoot the plumbing over text messages a few times. Just friendly stuff, nothing inappropriate. I barely even registered her as anything other than my wife's sister. Things started shifting about 18 months ago when Courtney got promoted to regional director at her company. Big raise, corner office, the whole package. Suddenly she's traveling 3 or 4 days a week, attending conferences in cities I'd never been to, doing corporate dinners at restaurants where a steak costs more than my grocery budget. I was proud of her at first. She'd worked hard for that position and deserved the recognition. But something changed in how she looked at me. Like I used to be this solid foundation she appreciated, and now I was more like furniture she walked past without noticing. She'd come home from these trips full of stories about executives and fancy restaurants and hotel suites with city views, and I'd be telling her about the new inventory system we implemented or how I finally figured out the problem with the boat's motor. Her eyes would glaze over like I was speaking a different language, like my little wins didn't matter compared to her big ones. The comparison game started around then, too. Little comments that seemed harmless but weren't. Oh, Jennifer's husband just made partner at his law firm, isn't that amazing? Did you hear Kevin bought a boat? A real one, not a project. Melissa's husband is taking her to Italy for their anniversary. Nothing direct, no straight accusations, but the message was clear. Why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you advancing faster? Why aren't you keeping up? I tried talking to her about it once. We were doing dishes after dinner, and I asked if she was unhappy, if there was something we needed to work on. She just laughed it off, said I was being sensitive, said she loved our life together. But actions speak louder than words, and her actions were saying something different. She stopped asking about the boat, stopped coming to company events with me, stopped reaching for my hand when we watched TV at night. Little deaths that add up over time. Then she started mentioning this guy named Grant. Grant from the Chicago office. Grant who's leading the expansion project. Grant who's so funny and smart and innovative. Grant. Every business trip seemed to involve Grant. Every conference call featured Grant's brilliant ideas. Every strategy session was improved by Grant's input. I'm not a jealous guy by nature, but I'm also not an idiot. When your wife starts bringing up another man's name more than she brings up yours, something's going on. I didn't say anything at first, just watched. Noticed how she'd tilt her phone away when texting, angling the screen so I couldn't see who she was messaging. Noticed how she'd take calls in the other room and close the door behind her. Noticed how she started going to the gym more often and buying new outfits for work trips, things she'd never wear around me. All the classics. If there's a handbook for signs your spouse is cheating, she was hitting every chapter. But I wasn't about to accuse her without something concrete. That's not how I operate. I'm a facts guy. I solve problems with information, not emotions. So I waited, kept my mouth shut, kept my eyes open, and let her think I was oblivious. And a month ago, she finally showed her cards. It was a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my khakis and polo, heating up some leftover pasta because she'd texted earlier that she had a late meeting and wouldn't be cooking. Courtney walked in around 7 looking like she'd rehearsed something in the car the whole drive home. That specific energy when someone's about to drop news they think you won't like, but they've convinced themselves is reasonable. She sat down at the kitchen table and did that thing where she folds her hands like we're in a business meeting. Ryan, I think we need to talk about our marriage. I kept stirring the pasta. Okay, what about it? She launched into this whole speech about how people grow and change, how relationships need to evolve to survive, how she's been doing a lot of self-reflection lately about what she wants from life. Corporate buzzwords applied to marriage. I half expected her to mention synergy and quarterly projections. Then she got to the point. I think we should consider opening our marriage. I stopped stirring, turned around to look at her. She had this expression like she'd just proposed a reasonable business merger, not the destruction of our vows. Like she was presenting a PowerPoint about relationship restructuring. Opening our marriage, I repeated. Yes. She nodded enthusiastically, clearly relieved I hadn't immediately started yelling. I've been reading about it, and I think it could be really healthy for us. We've been together for 6 years. It's natural to want to explore other connections. And honestly, I have needs that aren't being met right now. Needs that aren't being met. She went on about emotional connection and intellectual stimulation and physical compatibility, kept using terms like ethical non-monogamy and relationship expansion like she'd memorized a pamphlet. Probably had. Probably found some article online that told her this was the enlightened way to handle wanting to sleep with someone else while keeping your safety net intact. And the whole time, all I could think was, she's already got someone picked out. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't about exploring possibilities. This is about permission. So I asked, is there someone specific you're thinking about? Her face did this micro-expression thing. Just a flash of guilt before she smoothed it over. Practice this part too, probably. I mean, potentially. Grant and I have developed a real connection through work. We understand each other on a professional and personal level. But nothing has happened. I would never do anything without your consent. Grant. Of course it was Grant. Mr. Expansion Project? Mr. So Funny and Smart? Now it all made sense. Here's the thing about me. I don't do drama. I don't yell. I don't throw things. I don't make scenes. My dad was a screamer, and I promised myself a long time ago I'd never be that guy. Every argument turned into a shouting match in my childhood home. Scared the dog, scared us kids, scared my mom even though she'd never admit it. So instead of exploding like Courtney probably expected, I just stood there processing. My wife was asking permission to sleep with her coworker while staying married to me. She dressed it up in fancy language about growth and exploration, but that's what it was. And she thought I'd either agree out of fear of losing her or fight against it so she could play the victim. Poor Courtney, trapped in a marriage with a closed-minded husband who doesn't understand modern relationships. Neither of those options appealed to me, so I did something she didn't expect. I said, okay. Her whole face changed. Wait, really? Yeah. I shrugged like we were discussing what to have for dinner. If that's what you need, sure. Let's try it. She was so stunned she didn't know what to say. This clearly wasn't in her script. She'd prepared for resistance, for negotiation, for tearful conversations where she'd have to explain how this was actually good for our marriage, not casual acceptance. But there are going to be rules, I continued. If this goes both ways, right? It's not just you seeing other people. She hesitated. Well, yes, technically it's open for both of us, but I assumed you'd want to take things slow. Focus on our marriage first while I explore this connection with Grant. While you do whatever you want with Grant and I sit at home waiting, she flinched at my directness. That's not what I said. I'm saying we should establish boundaries. Make sure we're communicating. Sure. I turned back to my pasta. But if you're seeing other people, so am I. That's how open marriages work, right? Equal opportunity. I could practically feel her calculating behind me. She'd clearly expected this to be one-sided, her having fun while I waited at home like a faithful puppy. But she couldn't object without exposing that she'd never intended for this to be equal. Of course, she finally said. That's only fair. We spent the next hour discussing rules. She wanted a whole spreadsheet of protocols. Who we could see, when we could see them, what we could and couldn't do. No sleeping with anyone we both knew. No bringing anyone to the house. Always use protection. Text if you're going to be late. I agreed to everything because honestly, I was already planning my next move. She thought she was getting permission to cheat guilt-free. She had no idea what was coming. That weekend, I went to a family barbecue at her parents' house. Courtney was conveniently in Chicago for a work thing. Meeting with Grant, no doubt, now that she had the green light. Our rules said she had to tell me when she was seeing someone, but she just texted something vague about extended meetings. I didn't push it. I showed up alone, which Patricia thought was odd. But I made excuses about Courtney's busy schedule, her demanding new role, important project deadlines. Patricia seemed to accept it, though I caught Richard giving me a look across the yard that suggested he wasn't buying it entirely. Brooke was there, helping her dad grill burgers. She had her hair up and was wearing this old flannel shirt over a tank top, looking completely in her element. We got to talking like we always did. She mentioned her Jeep was making a weird noise, some kind of grinding when she turned left, and I offered to take a look. Spent about an hour in the driveway, diagnosing a loose belt while she handed me tools and asked questions about what I was doing. That's the serpentine belt, I explained, pointing at the worn rubber. See how it's cracked? That's what's causing the noise. You've got maybe another month before it breaks completely. She leaned in to look, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. Something simple, like vanilla. How hard is it to replace? Not bad if you have the right tools. I could do it for you next weekend if you want. Save you a few hundred at the shop. She grinned. You'd do that? Sure. Just buy the part, and I'll handle the rest. When I finished the initial inspection, she brought me a glass of lemonade, and we sat on the porch steps watching the sun go down. Her parents were inside cleaning up, and we had this moment of quiet that felt different from usual, more charged somehow. You seem off, she said finally. Everything okay with you and Courtney? I considered lying, giving her the everything's fine response that people expect. But something about Brooke made me want to be honest. Maybe it was how she looked at me like she actually wanted to know the answer, like my response mattered. Not really, I admitted. She asked for an open marriage this week. Brooke's eyebrows shot up. She what? Said she has needs I can't meet. Wants to see some guy from work. Brooke was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised me. That's not about you, Ryan. That's about her. What do you mean? She's been like this her whole life, always chasing the next thing, never satisfied with what she has. When we were kids, she'd get a toy and be bored with it in a week. Used to drive our parents crazy. I don't think she knows how to appreciate something good when she has it. I'd never heard Brooke talk about her sister like that. Usually family stays loyal, keeps the critiques private. But she sounded more sad than angry, like she'd watched this pattern play out before. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to play along for now. See where it goes. She nodded slowly. And are you actually going to see other people? Or is this just giving her enough rope to hang herself? I looked at her then, really looked. The evening light was doing something nice to her face, catching the gold in her brown hair, and I noticed for maybe the first time that she was genuinely beautiful. Not in the polished way Courtney was, but in a real way. Warm eyes, genuine smile, the kind of person you could actually trust. The kind of person who'd help you replace a serpentine belt and not complain about getting her hands dirty. I was thinking about asking someone out this week, actually. Oh yeah? Who? You. The silence that followed was heavy. Brooke stared at me like I'd just spoken in tongues. I could see her processing, running through all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Ryan, I'm her sister. I know. This would be allowed, I finished. She opened the marriage. She said I could see other people. She never specified who. Brooke let out a laugh that was half disbelief, half something else. You're serious? Completely. She was quiet again, and I could practically see the wheels turning. Finally, she said, she'd lose her mind. Probably. This would destroy her. Would it? Or would it just show her what she's risking? Brooke looked down at her hands, turning her glass of lemonade slowly. I've always thought you deserved better than how she treats you. The way she talks about your job, your house, your life. Like it's all beneath her now that she's some corporate big shot. It makes me sick, honestly. So have dinner with me. Friday night. Nothing fancy. Just two people getting to know each other better. She met my eyes again. This is insane. Maybe. But are you saying no? Another long pause. Then, slowly, she smiled. Pick me up at 7. I went home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation. Not the anxious kind I'd gotten used to with Courtney, where I was always waiting for the next criticism or comparison. This was different. Exciting. Friday came and I took Brooke to this little Italian place in the next town over. Neutral territory where nobody would recognize us. The kind of restaurant with checkered tablecloths and candles on every table, and a menu that hadn't changed since the 80s. Perfect. We talked for 3 hours straight, not about Courtney, not about the situation, not about the complicated family dynamics we were potentially blowing up. Just about life, her job, my job, our dreams, our disappointments. She told me about the dog she rescued last year, this pit bull mix that had been abused so badly it flinched whenever anyone moved too fast. She'd spent months earning its trust, and now it slept at the foot of her bed every night. I told her about rebuilding my grandfather's old fishing boat in the garage, how working on it made me feel connected to him, even though he'd been gone for years. It felt like a first date should feel, exciting and comfortable at the same time. Like discovering someone you already knew had all these layers you'd missed. I walked her to her door afterward, and we stood there in that awkward moment where neither of us knew what came next. The porch light was flickering, and somewhere down the street a dog was barking, and it all felt very real in a way my life hadn't felt real in a while. For the record, she said, I'm not doing this to hurt Courtney. I'm doing it because I actually like you. I've liked you for a long time. Just never thought. She trailed off, and I understood. You don't make moves on your sister's husband. That's basic decency. That's the kind of thing that tears families apart. But when that sister tears up the rule book herself, everything changes. Can I take you out again next week? She smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. I kissed her on the cheek and drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. Courtney got back from Chicago on Sunday. She was glowing in that way people glow when they've been having the time of their life doing things they shouldn't be doing. Barely noticed me when she walked in. Too busy texting on her phone. Probably Grant. How was your trip? I asked. Amazing. She didn't even look up. Really productive meetings. Cool. I had a good weekend too. That got her attention. She glanced over, curiosity breaking through her distraction. Oh yeah? Went on a date Friday night? The phone slowly lowered. Her whole body went still. A date? Yeah. Like we discussed. Open marriage, remember? Her face went through about 5 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, disbelief. Something that might have been fear. Of course. That's great. Good for you. Who with? I let the silence stretch just a bit. Brooke. The phone clattered to the floor. What did you just say? Brooke. Your sister. We went to dinner Friday. We're going out again this week. Courtney looked like I'd just announced I was moving to the moon. You're lying. I'm not. You can ask her yourself. She was already snatching up her phone, fingers flying. I watched as she called Brooke, waited, then started talking in this high-pitched voice I'd never heard before. She kept saying things like, "How could you, and he's my husband? And you're supposed to be my sister," while pacing around the kitchen like a caged animal. When she hung up, she turned to me with fire in her eyes. "You did this on purpose." "Did what? Exercise the same freedom you asked for? You're sleeping with my sister. We haven't slept together. Yet. Just dinner. Very respectful, actually. I even paid." "This isn't what I meant when I said open marriage." "Then what did you mean? That you get to run around with Grant while I sit home alone waiting for you?" She opened her mouth, closed it. Her whole argument was crumbling because she couldn't admit what we both knew. She'd expected this to be one-sided. Her having her cake while I maintained the household and welcomed her back with open arms. "I think we need to close the marriage," she finally said. This was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. "Nah." She blinked. "What? I'm good. This is working for me." "Working for you? You're dating my sister, and you're sleeping with your coworker. Difference is, I'm being honest about it." Her face went red. "That's not... Grant and I haven't..." "Courtney." I kept my voice calm, level. "I'm not stupid. And honestly, I don't really care anymore. You wanted an open marriage? You got one." She started crying then. The pretty, controlled crying she'd perfected over years of getting her way. Tears rolling down her cheeks without ruining her makeup, voice getting all shaky and vulnerable. "This isn't what I wanted. I wanted us to work on our connection, to explore and come back stronger. You wanted permission to cheat while keeping me as a safety net." I didn't raise my voice, just stated facts. "That's not what you're getting. I can't believe Brooke would do this to me. She didn't do anything to you. She went on a date with a guy who's allowed to date. She's my sister. And I'm your husband. Didn't seem to stop you from chasing Grant." That actually shut her up. She stood there in the kitchen, mascara starting to run despite her best efforts, looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Like I'd been a piece of furniture that suddenly started talking back. "I'm asking you to stop seeing her," she said quietly. "And I'm asking you to stop seeing Grant." "Are you going to?" She couldn't answer, because the answer was no, and she knew I knew it. We slept in separate rooms that night, and the next night. The house became this cold battlefield where we circulated around each other without touching. She'd leave for work in the morning without saying goodbye. I'd come home to empty rooms and silence. We'd pass in the hallway like strangers in a hotel. Meanwhile, I kept seeing Brooke. We went to a movie, some comedy that made us both laugh until our faces hurt. Had lunch at this diner near her work where she introduced me to the best turkey club sandwich I've ever eaten. Took a hike through the Metro Park and talked about everything and nothing while her rescue dog ran circles around us. The weird thing was how natural it all felt. With Courtney, everything had always been performance. The right restaurants, the right clothes, the right social media posts to show we were the perfect couple. With Brooke, I could just be myself. Show up in jeans and a hoodie, talk about work without feeling like I was boring her, actually laugh without wondering if it sounded successful enough. Brooke brought me to meet a litter of puppies at her clinic one afternoon, just born a few days earlier, eyes still closed, little fuzzy bundles squirming in their box. She picked one up and placed it in my hands, this tiny warm thing that fit in my palm and smelled like milk and new life. "This is the best part of my job," she said softly. "New beginnings." I looked at her holding her own puppy, and something clicked into place. This was what happiness was supposed to feel like. Word got back to the family pretty quick. Courtney made sure of that. She called her parents crying about how I'd betrayed her by dating Brooke, how I'd ruined everything, how I was tearing the family apart with my cruelty. To my surprise, Richard called me directly, not yelling, not threatening, just wanting to hear my side of the story. I told him everything, the open marriage request, Grant, how Courtney had expected it to be one-sided, how Brooke and I had started talking, and one thing led to another. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, "Courtney's always wanted what she can't have, and she's always thrown away what she's got. Been that way since she was a little girl." I didn't know how to respond to that. "Brooke's a good girl," he continued, "better than her sister in a lot of ways. I'm not saying I approve of this mess, but I understand it." Patricia wasn't quite as understanding at first. There were some tense family dinners where she tried to play peacekeeper, seating Courtney and me on opposite sides of the table and making pointed comments about family unity. But even she eventually admitted that Courtney had started this whole situation. You can't blow up your marriage and then complain about the debris. Things came to a head about 3 weeks after that first date with Brooke. Courtney came home early from work one day when I was getting ready to go out. She saw me in the bathroom, freshly showered, putting on cologne. "Where are you going?" "Out with Brooke. We're trying that new sushi place downtown. She blocked the doorway. We need to talk. Really talk. So talk. I want us to sit down and really work on this. Together. Not interested. Ryan, please. She was using her vulnerable voice. The one that used to work on me. I made a mistake. I know that now. He was a distraction. I got caught up in the attention and the excitement of something new. But you're my husband. We have a life together. We have a house together. I corrected her. The life part's been dead for a while. Don't say that. We can fix this. But you have to stop seeing Brooke. That's non-negotiable. Funny. I finished with the cologne, checked my hair in the mirror. Grant was negotiable, but my relationship isn't? It's different. How? She's my sister? You're doing this to hurt me. I finally turned to face her. I'm doing this because I'm happy. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. Brooke sees me, Courtney. The real me. Not the me you want me to be, or the me you're embarrassed by at your work functions. Just me. Her eyes filled with tears again. But I love you. No, you don't. I said it gently, without anger. You love the idea of me. The stable husband at home while you chase whatever shiny thing catches your eye. But you don't love who I actually am. You haven't in a long time. That's not true. Then tell me one thing I'm passionate about. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. You like your job? I like restoring my grandfather's fishing boat. I've been working on it every weekend for 2 years. You've never once asked about it. Never come out to the garage to see how it's going. Never asked when I think it'll be finished. She had nothing to say to that. I stepped past her toward the door. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Brooke and I had a great dinner that night. Laughed about nothing, shared plates of sashimi, played footsie under the table like teenagers on a first date. When I dropped her off, we kissed for the first time. Really kissed. The kind of kiss that makes you forget where you are and what time it is, and all the reasons you shouldn't be doing that. I drove home feeling like I was 22 again. The next few weeks were a strange limbo. Courtney alternated between crying, apologizing, threatening, and pretending nothing was wrong. She'd swing from begging me to come back to claiming she could do better anyway. Classic manipulation tactics that might have worked on me a year ago, but just bounced off now. I'd seen behind the curtain. There was no going back. She did stop seeing Grant, or so she claimed. Blocked him on everything. Requested a transfer to a different team at work. But I suspected that was more about damage control than actual remorse. Grant's wife had apparently found out about their affair, and things were getting messy at Courtney's company. Her perfect reputation was taking hits from all sides. Meanwhile, Brooke and I got closer. We'd have dinner at her place where she'd cook these amazing meals from scratch, while I sat on her counter drinking lemonade and keeping her company. We'd fall asleep watching movies on her couch with her rescue dog wedged between us. It was simple and quiet and exactly what I needed. One night, about 6 weeks after everything started, Brooke asked the question I'd been waiting for. Where do you see this going? We were sitting on her back porch, watching fireflies blink in her overgrown garden. I could hear the neighbor's sprinklers and smell cut grass from somewhere down the street. I don't know, I admitted, but I know I don't want to stop. Your marriage is over. Even if Courtney and I stay legally married for a while, whatever we had is done. She killed it when she decided I wasn't enough. Brooke was quiet, processing. My family's a mess because of this. My mom still doesn't know how to act around me. Courtney won't even speak to me at Sunday dinners. I know, and I'm sorry for my part in that. You didn't start this. No, but I definitely threw gasoline on it. She laughed softly. Yeah, you kind of did. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, she said, I'm not going anywhere, just so you know. Whatever happens with Courtney, with the family, with all of it, I'm in this. That meant more to me than she probably realized. After years of feeling like I was never quite enough for Courtney, here was someone saying I was worth sticking around for. No conditions, no requirements, no hoops to jump through, just acceptance. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Courtney didn't take it well. She showed up at my work the day after she got served, just walked right into the distribution center like she owned the place, demanded to see me in front of my entire team. Security had to escort her out. My boss pulled me aside afterward and asked if everything was okay. I told him my marriage was ending, and he just nodded and said, take whatever time you need. Her lawyer sent a letter claiming I'd violated our marriage by dating Brooke. My lawyer sent back a copy of her own text messages where she'd outlined the open marriage arrangement. That shut that down fast. Her attorney apparently told her she had no case and to settle quickly before things got uglier. The settlement negotiations took about 3 weeks. She wanted the house. I said, fine, buy me out. She couldn't afford to. We listed it and split the equity. She wanted alimony. My lawyer pointed out she made more than me. She wanted the truck. I laughed at that one. The day I moved out, I had Brooke and her dad Richard help me load boxes. Courtney sat on the porch watching the whole thing, arms crossed, jaw tight. Richard didn't say a word to her, just carried boxes to my truck and loaded them in silence. That probably stung worse than anything I could have said. When we finished, Courtney finally spoke up. "You're making a huge mistake, Ryan." Richard stopped and looked at his daughter. "No, sweetheart, you made the mistake. He's just cleaning it up." She went inside and slammed the door. Richard shook my hand, told me to take care of his other daughter, and drove off. 3 months later, things got interesting. Grant's wife found out about the affair. Not just Courtney either. Turns out Grant had been running the same play with 2 other women at different regional offices. His wife hired a forensic accountant and found hotel receipts, restaurant charges, the whole paper trail. She filed for divorce and made sure everyone at Grant's company knew exactly why. Grant got fired within a week. Company couldn't keep a regional director who'd been sleeping with subordinates across multiple offices. HR nightmare. The wife got the house, the cars, and a chunk of his retirement. Last I heard, he's working at some small consulting firm in Indiana, basically starting over at 43. Courtney's career took a hit too. Everyone at her company knew she'd been one of Grant's flings. The promotion she'd been angling for went to someone else. She requested a transfer to the Cincinnati office just to get away from the gossip. About a month after she moved, she reached out to Brooke, not to apologize. She wanted Brooke to dump me so Courtney could have another shot. Said she was willing to forgive my little rebellion if I came back and apologized properly. Brooke showed me the texts. I screenshot them and saved them just in case Courtney ever tried to rewrite history. Brooke's response was short. "He's happy. I'm happy. Move on." Courtney blocked her immediately. 2 weeks after that, Patricia called and invited us to Sunday dinner. Just me and Brooke. First time since everything went down that I'd been back to their house for a family meal. We pulled up in my truck and Patricia was already on the porch waiting. She hugged Brooke first, then me, held on a little longer than usual. Richard was in the backyard firing up the grill. He handed me a spatula, and we cooked burgers together like old times. Over dinner, Patricia asked about the boat. I told her it was almost finished, just needed a few more weekends of work. Richard looked up from his plate. "I'd like to see it when it's done. Maybe take a ride if you'll have me." I told him absolutely. First trip out, he's got a spot. Patricia sent us home with enough leftovers to last a week. As we were loading them into the truck, she pulled Brooke aside. I couldn't hear what she said, but Brooke came back with tears in her eyes and hugged her mom for a solid minute. On the drive home, Brooke told me what Patricia said. She told me she always worried I'd end up alone because I was too picky. Then she said maybe I was just waiting for the right person to be available. The next weekend, I finished the boat, put the last coat of varnish on the hull, mounted the new motor, and stepped back to look at what 2 years of work had produced. Grandpa's boat, restored and ready for the water. Brooke came out to the garage with 2 glasses of lemonade. She looked at the boat, then at me, and said, "When do we launch it?" "Saturday. I already reserved a spot at the marina." She grinned. "I'll pack sandwiches." That Saturday, we trailered the boat to the lake. Richard met us there, helped me back it into the water. The motor fired up on the first try. I took us out past the no-wake zone, opened up the throttle, and felt the wind hit my face for the first time since I was a kid, riding with my grandfather. Brooke sat in the seat next to me, her rescue dog in her lap, both of them squinting into the sun. Richard stood at the back with his hands on the rail, watching the shoreline get smaller. We spent 3 hours on the water, ate sandwiches, watched some guy on a jet ski wipe out spectacularly, and talked about nothing important. When we got back to the dock, Richard helped me load the boat back onto the trailer. "Your grandpa would be proud of this," he said, "and proud of you." That night, Brooke and I sat on her back porch watching the sun go down. Her dog was asleep between us, snoring like a chainsaw. "I've been looking at houses," she said casually. "Yeah? There's one about 10 minutes from here. Has a big garage, fenced yard for the dog. 3 bedrooms." I looked at her. "You want to show me?" "Tomorrow. I already scheduled a viewing. We put an offer in the following week, got the place for under asking because the sellers were motivated. Closed 30 days later. I'm writing this from the garage of our new house. The boat's parked in the corner. Brooke's inside making dinner. The dog's on his bed by the door, watching me type. Courtney texted me last week. First contact in months. She wanted to let me know she's seeing someone new. A corporate trainer she met at a conference. She said she hoped I was doing well and that maybe someday we could be friends. I didn't respond. What would be the point? Final update on the Grant situation. His ex-wife apparently started dating his former business partner. They got engaged last month. Grant showed up at their engagement party uninvited and had to be removed by security. Someone recorded it on their phone, and it made the rounds at Courtney's old office. She called Brooke crying about it, said everyone was laughing at her by association. Brooke told her that's rough and hung up. For everyone asking if I feel bad about how things went down. I don't. Courtney wanted to play games. She set the rules. I just played by them better than she expected. And for the record, Brooke and I are doing great. We're taking the boat out again this weekend. Richard's coming, Patricia's packing a cooler. Life's pretty good when you stop trying to be someone else's idea of enough and just be yourself. Thanks for reading. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.